Good afternoon and welcome to this forum. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Terence Gomez. I'm the Acting Director for the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies. This forum that we're having today is one in a series of programs that we are organizing to pay tribute to the memory of Royal Professor Ungku Abdul Aziz, following his demise last December. I would like to thank you for joining us in this forum, and I'd also like to welcome our speakers to reflect on the life of Professor Ungku Aziz. When we were planning this forum, we wanted it to be a review of Ungku's work and academic contribution. For the forum today, we are focusing on specific issues, specifically first, poverty alleviation. I would like to stress that in the 1960s, when Ungku was doing his research, half the population in Malaysia was poor. The second aspect of this forum, which we are looking at, is this. What were the development ideas proposed by Ungku to deal with the scourge of poverty in this country in the 1960s? I would like to stress that when Ungku was talking about these development ideas, he also was one of the key contributors to the new economic policy, which was introduced in 1970 as a mechanism to deal with the issues of poverty as well as inequitable development. Our third focus in today's forum is on rural development and spatial inequalities. These were also issues which were core to Ungku in his research. We have invited today's speakers who understood Ungku's agenda for equitable development and how to go about bringing real change in society. We noted, and we would like to stress this, Ungku's research focus was on the most marginalized of peoples, the rural poor. What is it about his research that addressed methods, that introduced methods to help the poor folk in rural areas? What is true also about Ungku, and we would know as we were his students, he taught us to appreciate the complexity of problems facing Malaysia, indeed the world, the emerging economies of the world. And as he noted, it's a complex web of interconnected issues that go to the making of these problems. These complex issues will be discussed and reviewed today. But Ungku also noted we need to undertake research well. If not, we will draw wrong conclusions. This is important because one issue that we are going to discuss today is this. It will be brought up. In trying to deal with poverty in this country, new problems have emerged. Why have these new problems emerged? And how do we go about eradicating these new problems too? Where did we go wrong? These are issues that will be debated in the forum today. One institution that was created to focus research that Ungku was committed to was this center, the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies. I am pleased to say that the founders of this institution are here with us as speaker and as the moderator. The first director of the center, Dr. Solochunanaya, is here, and the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Administration, where the center was situated at that time, Professor Nomor Manso, is also here. So the founders of this institution are here to also provide insights into the role of the center and what it was supposed to do to develop the ideas passed on to us, the next generation of academics at the Faculty of Economics and Administration. There will be important lessons for us to learn from this forum that we are hosting today. How do we move forward with the lessons that we learn from this research will be something that we will note at the center and we will take up in future. I want to end by thanking our speakers. They immediately agreed when we approached them to speak today. I also want to say that we wanted to host this forum earlier, but we have encountered many problems, mainly because of this serious pandemic, health pandemic that we are confronted with today, which has contributed to persistently to lockdowns. I want to also thank the organizing committee, ably led by Dr. Rohana Jani. It was not easy organizing this forum, and a lot of thought went into the planning for this for this particular forum in terms of how we should present it. I would also like to thank the other academic staff of the center for their contribution to this forum. I must say I'm deeply indebted to the administrative staff of the center. They have worked diligently to organize this event. Finally, I would like to thank those of you who have made the time to come here to pay tribute to Prof. Ungku and to listen to the speakers today as they reflect on the life of Ungku. Let me now hand over the forum to our moderator for today, Professor Norma Mansur, the former Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Administration, who also played a key role in establishing the Ungku Aziz Center. Professor Norma.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez, for the welcoming remarks. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to Professor Terence Gomez and also our distinguished panelists. We cannot have a better panel than we have this afternoon, because these are all the students and also the followers of the works of Pak Ungku. And I'm glad that I am the moderator today. Allow me to introduce myself, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Norma Mansur. I'm also director of the Social Wellbeing Research Center, University of Malaya, and also the president of the Malaysian Economic Association. And Ungku is one of the founding members of the Malaysian Economic Association. Although Professor Terence has spoke a little bit about the center, if I can add to what Prof. Terence's points made earlier, is that the center is beyond the borders of Malaysia. The center is supposed to be a referral point, and I think Dr. Sulo will talk more about this. It's supposed to be a referral for development for the South-South countries. Pak Lah was the Prime Minister then, and the South-South cooperation was strong and it was alive. Malaysia was seen as one of the models of development, especially with regards to managing the plural society, multicultural, multi-religious, and also with other kinds of issues that we've had. And yet we were able to weather the storms that came upon us. So with that novel idea was the center established. And I had Dr. Sulo then, who was the head of department, and she was on sabbatical leave. Yeah, she has agreed to work on the paper for cabinet. So it was a cabinet decision to establish the center, and it was the Minister of Higher Education then was Dato' Mustafa Muhammad. So the center was established to bring together academic community, development practitioners, policy makers, NGOs, and observers on development issues and challenges. And the idea is also for the region and for South-South countries to come together, together with our academics and our practitioners to talk about what were the issues that Malaysia was facing. Maybe other countries can learn from us, or maybe from our mistakes that we have made. So that was the intention. And I'm glad that today we are talking and looking, and like I said, that we cannot discuss enough or learn enough or research enough on these issues that Pak Ungku has worked on in almost 7 decades that he had worked on, although Professor Chamuri will touch upon how a good part of his years also was spent on talking about education. But nevertheless, they were all linked to development. Yeah. So today's theme is on poverty and development. And there are 3 main speakers, and these speakers were carefully selected based on their expert knowledge. These are very distinguished experts in their own fields. And we will start with Professor Emeritus Chamuri Siwar, who will talk about poverty eradication in Peninsular Malaysia, who will give a broad view and the trend over the years. And our second speaker is Professor Dr. Suluchana Nair, who will talk on poverty eradication and equitable development in Malaysia. And of course, our Dato' Professor Madeline Burma, that will highlight what Professor Terence mentioned on the spatial poverty, which is in Sabah, Sarawak, and some other, which is similar to some other rural parts of Malaysia. Yeah. So I was instructed by the Secretariat to also talk about the our setting, because this is not usual, although it's been usual for almost 2 years now. Yeah. That we are using Zoom and FB Live through the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies Facebook page. And also each panelist is allowed 20 minutes to present based on the topic given, and the Q&A later will follow for another half an hour. And our Q&A session will continue immediately after Professor Madeline's presentation. And please click your Q&A button below if you have any questions, and the panelists will answer your questions at the Q&A session later. And if you have any comments or concerns, kindly do so in the chat button. Yeah, as before we start the session, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our 3 widely recognized experts. And also what I'm doing is also trying to delay the time that the speakers will speak, because you know, people are still coming in, I'm sure. Not that the introduction is not important, but I think you can always Google and find out who they are. Yeah, but just quickly, yeah, our first speaker is Professor Chamhuri Siwar, who is also an emeritus professor and former principal research fellow at the Institute for Environment and Development, Lestari, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. He has been a lecturer for more than 45 years at the Faculty of Economics at UKM. He has served as head Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics, and also a principal research fellow at the Institute of Environment and Development. I think most of what I'm going to say is here, so I don't think I should, shouldn't read it out. I think you can read for yourselves, and goes to show how extensive has the work been with regards to Professor Emeritus Chamhuri Siwar's career. Yeah. And the second speaker is Professor Dr. Sulochana Nair. She'll be speaking from Uzbekistan. She was, as mentioned by Professor Terence, the founding director of the center, which was then called the CPDS, the Center for Poverty and Development Studies. And she is one of Pak Ungku's proteges. She's currently the Vice Chancellor and CEO of Binary University of Management and Entrepreneurship. And she has been with the Faculty of Economics, like forever. Yeah. She was associate professor, head of development studies, and also, I don't know whether some of you would recall CEDER, yeah, Center for Ethnic Relations and Development. I think Professor Terence was one of the researchers with the center, and also Dr. Sulo played a big part with CEDER as well. Yeah, she's worked on this topic for a long time, and she's familiar with issues in Central Asia and Cambodia. And she's also currently the Board of Trustees of Sejahtera Foundation and the Gandhi Memorial Trust. And on the 5th of March 2019, she was awarded, conferred by the Republic of Uzbekistan's Specialized Education, with the title Honorable Professor, in recognition of her outstanding contributions. And the third speaker is also widely known, although her work now is mainly on Suhakam, but she has been with UKM also forever, 35 years. And she is she's been a consultant to so many organizations. She was awarded with 3 distinctive recognitions from Sarawak, and also Tokoh Wanita Sempurna Hari Pekerja QPAX, And in recognition of her contributions, Professor Dato Dr. Madeline Burma was awarded honorary professorship by the University Malaysia Sarawak. Yeah. And so those are our three distinguished panelists. And now if I can invite Professor Chamuri to, to do your presentation. Thank you, Prof.
Sukran, please help me forward this slide. Yeah, okay. Up. Okay. Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. Please carry on.
Okay. The topic given to me is poverty eradication in Peninsular Malaysia, but I have slightly altered it to Malaysia because most of the thing I'll be talking is overall trends and contribution or issues related very much to in the Malaysian context. So this paper has two parts. One is the part on poverty eradication in Malaysia, and then the second part will review the work of Ungku Aziz, Allahyarham, Ungku Aziz, related to poverty, rural development, and also especially Malay poverty. Persistent poverty has been an issue in all of the development plans, starting from the new economic policy, national development policy, national vision policy, national transformation policy, and also the recently shared vision policy. And this policy goes through the second Malaysia plan up to the 12th Malaysia plan. We have seen great achievement in poverty alleviation, looking at various trends in the poverty incidents, whether by ethnicity, strata, and also overall by states. Poverty is defined based on the poverty income line, which is a cost of basic needs approach. It has three components. One is the food PLI, second is the non-food PLI, and third is the characteristics of the households. The poor is defined as households with monthly income less than the PLI. Hardcore poor is household income less than the food PLI. And then we have the concept of relative poor, which is household income, monthly income less than 50% of the median income. The poverty income line as of 2015 was 980 per month, and it was revised to 2,208 in 2019. And then beginning the 11th Malaysia Plan, the new multi-dimensional poverty index was introduced. This includes monetary and non-monetary indicators such as education, health, sanitation, and all that. These are the indicators of the multi-dimensional poverty index: education, health, living standards, income, environment, and also psychology. And some of the indicators that have been used, and then cause of poverty, the cutoff for poverty line, and also the weights that were assigned. One issue that always crops up regarding the PLI is a criticism that our PLI is very low. A lot of criticism actually has been put forward by local academics, but recently, when the UN representative on human rights, Professor Philip Alston, criticized Malaysia is vastly undercounting poverty, Malaysia's claim that it has almost eradicated poverty is incorrect. Government need to reassess how it measures poverty. According to him, the PLI of 980 translated into 8 ringgit per day or $2 per day for an urban family is tragically low for a country to achieve high income status. Malaysian PLI also does not reflect the present cost of living, especially in urban areas with high rents, high healthcare and transportation costs. Another issue is the exclusion of the vulnerable population. This includes indigenous population, migrant and stateless workers, and also millions of non-citizens that have been deprived of basic needs and also basic needs and facilities. So this, according to the UN mission representative, is underreporting and also undercutting poverty, statistics on poverty, which has led to underinvestment in poverty eradication program. This is a trend of poverty rates from 1970 to 2019. We witnessed that the incidence of poverty has declined from about nearly 60% in 1970 to almost 0% in 2014. But then the criticism and the revision of the poverty income line and the recent economic downturn has led to the increase in poverty to about between 8 to 15% after 2014. I think the situation now is much worse considering the pandemic that is happening around the country. This is some figures on the overall and also hardcore poverty, the trends. This is the median gross income by ethnic, which shows the comparison between Bumiputra, Chinese and Indians, which I think very familiarly shows the higher median gross income for the Chinese compared to the Indians and Bumiputra. This is the gross monthly income for the bottom 40% by ethnic group also. And then this is the income gap, which puts the range of income between the B1, B2, B3, and B4 for the B40. And then we have the middle income M1, M2, M3, and 4, and top one, T1 and T20, T20, up to 15,000. This is the picture of the income gap between rural and urban, and then further income gap between the income classes. Okay, the recent pandemic has likely to push poverty. Globally, the projection by World Bank said that it can push poverty to 88 to 115 million people into extreme poverty due to loss of employment, businesses, livelihood, displacement, causing stress and many social illness. In Malaysia, the poverty incidence currently is at 5.6% and is projected to reach 8.4%. Study by our colleague, Professor Hassan in UTM estimates that with this pandemic, the number of poor is estimated to rise between 40,000 to 180,000, depending on the projection that we have. Either we want to project it at 1% increase, 2% increase, and so on. So this is a picture of the impact of income poverty, COVID-19 on poverty. I move from this narration of the poverty incidence to looking at the contribution of Ungku Aziz. I've based this from my reading on the book, his book on Jejak-Jejak di Pantai Zaman, or footprints on the sense of poverty. This is a book which I think which accumulate the work of Ungku Aziz and also two works from Zakba. Ungku Aziz has I speak this in Malay because it was written in Malay. Aziz memberi penghormatan kepada penulis terulung yang menulis tentang konsep kemiskinan yang dimulakan oleh Zakba pada tahun 1927. Zakba menulis dua makalah tentang Poverty of the Malays and the Salvation of the Malays. Pendapat Zakba ini dimasukkan boleh dikonsepkan sebagai kemiskinan ekonomi kebendaan dan konsep bukan kebendaan seperti kemiskinan moral dan rohani. Basically, during that time, Zakba was speaking about relative poverty, which encompasses not only income but also non-income. So mengikut Zakba, orang Melayu kita pada hitungan adalah satu kaum yang tersangat miskin. Miskin adalah sifatnya yang terlebih sangat lengkap dan nyata daripada sifat-sifat kebangsaan yang lain. Ia menjadikan mereka ketinggalan di belakang dalam perlumbaan kemajuan. Miskin pada wang ringgit, miskin pada harta benda, miskin pada hemat dan cita-cita, miskin pada pelajaran dan latihan. Jadi mereka ketinggalan dalam perlumbaan bangsa-bangsa. Ini adalah makalah yang ditulis oleh Zakba pada tahun 1923. Jadi Zakba pada umumnya bercakap tentang kemiskinan Melayu yang meliputi serba-serbi dan meliputi pada semua pihak. Tambah Zakba bahawa negeri Melaya pada masa itu adalah sangat mewah. Banyak hasil mahsulnya, tetapi keuntungan daripada hasil mahsul itu bukanlah dinikmati oleh orang Melayu, katanya. Orang dagang sentiasa keluar masuk dan pergi datang ke negeri Melayu ini dan berhimpun kekayaan dan menjadikan mereka tuan-tuan tanah dan membina perdagangan dan juga toko-toko yang hebat, tetapi bukanlah orang Melayu yang kelihatan meraih faedah daripada ini. Orang juga menghantar anak-anak mereka ke Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, Glasgow dan sebagainya, tetapi bukanlah orang Melayu dan yang mendapat capaian itu. Okay, how doing with time? Jadi beliau menyedari bahawa kemiskinan adalah satu konsep relatif. Kemudian saya pergi kepada pandangan Ungku Aziz. Ungku Aziz menulis tentang ekonomi desa yang mengaitkannya dengan kemiskinan. Pada tahun 1951, Ungku menulis tentang tabiat menabung di kalangan penduduk desa, some aspects of Malaysian rural economy related to measures of mobilizing rural savings. Kertas ini dan cadangan yang berikutnya telah mendorong penubuhan lembaga tabung haji. Kemudian Ungku Aziz menulis panjang lebar tentang facts and fallacies about the Malay economy, zahir dan batin ekonomi Melayu yang diterbitkan dalam beberapa siri. Tulisannya menimbulkan bahawa orang Melayu sebahagian besarnya mendiami kawasan desa dan luar bandar, terutama sebagai penanam padi penoreh getah yang pendapatannya sangat rendah, dianggarkan antara 50 hingga 100 ringgit sebulan. Ungku Aziz juga menulis tentang sambungan daripada facts and fallacies ini in retrospect with new footnotes, Mereka kata bahawa 76% dari penduduk Melayu adalah sebagai petani dan nelayan, dan 3.4% daripada mereka bergantung kepada hasil pertanian dan perikanan, manakala 4.5 atau 80% daripada orang Melayu tinggal di kampung. Jadi ekonomi Melayu adalah ekonomi kampung berasaskan pertanian dan perikanan. 70% daripada ekonomi Melayu bergantung hidup kepada pertanian dengan pendapatan yang sangat kecil yang meletakkan mereka dalam kategori miskin. Jadi kemiskinan desa pada umumnya adalah kemiskinan orang Melayu. Pada tahun 63, Ungku menulis syarahan inauguralnya bertajuk Poverty and Rural Development in Malaysia. Dia mentakrifkan kemiskinan sebagai jurang antara pendapatan golongan berpendapatan tinggi dengan pendapatan rendah, dan ini disebabkan oleh daya usaha yang rendah, penindasan dan keadaan terbiak. Dan boleh dikatakan bahawa penghapusan kemiskinan boleh berlaku melalui penghapusan penindasan dan juga pengenalan teknologi pada kegiatan ekonomi desa. Seterusnya, Ungku Aziz bercakap tentang bagaimana pembaikan dalam masalah orang Melayu terletak dalam penyelesaian masalah kemiskinan desa. Rancangan-rancangan pembangunan desa yang banyak dijalankan oleh agensi-agensi seperti RIDA, MARA, FELDA, FELCRA, LPP dan LPN. Ini semua akan menyumbang kepada pembasmian kemiskinan. Another kelemahan ialah dari segi aspek pelajaran yang diperkaitkan dengan pemakanan. Ungku menulis tentang proteins, poverty, proteins and disguised starvation yang diterbitkan dalam kajian ekonomi Malaysia tahun 65, dan Ungku menyatakan bahawa meninggikan daya usaha Melayu melalui pelajaran yang lebih baik dan kemasukan yang lebih mudah kepada pekerjaan perusahaan sebagai satu rancangan untuk membasmi kemiskinan Melayu. Ungku juga banyak terlibat dengan pembangunan desa kerana beliau banyak bercampur dengan pembuat dasar kerajaan. Beliau juga menduduki beberapa jawatan kuasa seperti RIDA, Pharma dan juga Majlis Perundingan Negara, dan dia kata bahawa tidak sedikit di antara ramalan saya yang dapat dibuktikan kebenarannya. Bermakna banyaklah tu, tidak sedikit di antara ramalan saya yang banyak dibuktikan kebenarannya. Jadi idea atau tulisan Ungku mengenai kemiskinan amat relevan dalam rancangan-rancangan Malaysia, terutama rancangan Malaysia pertama 66-70, rancangan Malaysia kedua 71-75 dan kajian semula rancangan Malaysia kedua 71-75. Jadi dalam rancangan ini peningkatan pendapatan dan daya usaha buruh daripada tingkat yang rendah kepada tingkat yang lebih tinggi adalah kunci kepada rancangan Malaysia untuk membasmi kemiskinan. Jadi kesimpulannya, Ungku telah menulis banyak tentang isu kemiskinan, terutama kemiskinan Melayu, dan ini berkait rapat dengan kemiskinan dan kemunduran ekonomi desa. Pembasmian kemiskinan melalui rancangan-rancangan pembangunan desa, gerakan koperasi, peningkatan daya usaha dan pendapatan rendah ke pendapatan yang lebih tinggi melalui pendidikan dan latihan merupakan cara-cara yang berkesan untuk membasmi kemiskinan. Jadi akhirnya dia menegaskan bahawa pembasmian kemiskinan adalah tanpa mengira kaum. Jadi itu saya rasa kesimpulan ataupun pandangan umum mengenai sumbangan Ungku kepada kemiskinan, terutamanya kemiskinan Melayu. Sekian Prof. Norma.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih Profesor Jamuri. That was very interesting, yeah, that he shared the analysis, Pak Ungku's analysis into the rural poverty. Yeah, Ungku's work did not just confine to the Malay poverty, but it's because a majority of the rural population were Malays, and therefore it looks as if he was just looking at Malaysia, but it was more about the economy and economic justice. And he's done some work, for instance, on the Indians in the estates. Yeah. So as far as Ungku is concerned, it is about economic justice. And Professor Chamuri has also shared Ungku's analysis on what are some of the causes of poverty, what are the characteristics of poverty. So it's not unidimensional, it is multidimensional and multifaceted. Therefore, even the poverty line income should not be looked at from the income perspective, but it would also have to be the other aspects of human well-being. So that's what we get from Professor Chamuri. Now I move on to Professor Sulo, Professor Sulochana Nair. Please, can you share your own thoughts and, especially you have worked very closely. You're not just a student of Pak Ungku, but you also work very closely with him. And especially when we were working on the center, on the establishment of the chair and the center, I think Professor Sulochana Nair had a very intimate, I would say intellectually intimate discussions with Pak Ungku. Please, Sulo.
Sulo, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just realized I'm muted. Okay, thank you, Prof. Norma. Thank you, Prof. Terence and the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies. Greetings from Uzbekistan. And since I'm in Uzbekistan, the normal greeting in Uzbekistan is Assalamu alaikum. So I will use that local greeting. I want to divide my presentation into two parts. The first part will be about the Ungku Aziz Chair and the Center for Poverty and Development Studies, fondly known as CPDS, as well as the Prof. Ungku's contributions to research on poverty, on equitable distribution. Professor Ungku Aziz is a statesman par excellence. He refused to accept any titles or accolades like Tantri, Dato, or anything else. So when the then Prime Minister, Tun Abdullah Badawi, who is an alumnus of wanted to bestow an accolade on Prof. Ungku Aziz, and when the idea of a chair in poverty studies named after Prof. Ungku was mooted, Prof. Ungku Aziz agreed to this. Prof. Norma and myself went for a historic meeting with the late Dato Professor Mahani, and she told us that a chair would be established at the FEA. The management of FEA at that point felt that having a standalone chair without a center where the chair would be housed was not a good idea based on past experience where there were only chairs and activities centered around the visits of the chairholder, and at other times everything went kind of quiet. The cabinet on the 12th of July 2006 agreed to establish the Royal Professor Ungku Aziz Chair at the Faculty of Economics and Administration at and with the establishment of the chair, a Center for Poverty and Development Studies was also established. And the establishment of the chair and the center actually shows the government's recognition of Ungku Aziz's outstanding contributions to the field of education, economic development, especially rural development and poverty, but also Professor Ungku Aziz's contributions to University Malaya as its longest serving Vice Chancellor. The chair and the center was launched in November 2006 by the 5th Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Ahmad Badawi, and it avows Malaysia's continuing commitment to poverty eradication. And the center, as Prof. Norma has mentioned, was set up not as a localized center for University Malaya, but a national center, which was a constant reminder from the then Minister of Higher Education. And bearing this in mind, several research projects that were initiated by the center had researchers from all the public universities in Malaysia, including those in Sabah and Sarawak. And the center had various objectives, which are on the website of the center or in the historical, so not go through that. And the objectives were various things like to be a center for poverty for the region, center for development studies, focusing on the rural poor. And I was asked by Professor Norma, the dean, and as she has mentioned, I was dragged out of my sabbatical to spearhead this effort of setting up the center. And as my own PhD was on poverty, I said yes to Prof. Norma's request. It's very difficult to say no to Prof. Norma. And as mentioned by Prof. Norma, I had the opportunity to deal with Professor Ungku Aziz on a regular basis leading up to the establishment of the chair and the center. The first of the discussions revolved around who should be the chairholder. And I remember very distinctly Professor Ungku Aziz telling me, and somebody else was with me at this meeting, that the chairholder should be somebody who has not yet got the Nobel Prize, but is about to get the Nobel Prize. And a prominent name was mentioned, but the government's decision was to appoint Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the then director of the Earth Institute of Columbia University, as the first holder of the Royal Professor Ungku Aziz Chair. And I was appointed as the founding director of CPDS. And Prof. Ungku Aziz's contributions to poverty and equitable development. Any scholar studying poverty in Malaysia or on Malaysia will begin by reading the writings of Royal Professor Ungku Aziz. In his early work on poverty and rural development, Professor Ungku Aziz wrote on 4 aspects of poverty. We refer to its measurable socio-economic characteristics associated with poverty, the causes of poverty, and the inhibiting effects of poverty. Poverty's root causes were traced to the colonial system, agency houses, and the famous monopsony system existing in the rural areas, which was famously called the MM system. As a student of rural development, our lectures also constantly refer to the work of Ungku Aziz. And moving on, when I was doing my PhD study, Professor Ungku Aziz's measurement of poverty and his well-known Sarong Index never failed to arouse the curiosity of my fellow PhDs. I have to say something about the Sarong Index, which is not well known, but is well known among the people who are the pioneers of the launch of the center. On the eve of the launch of the center, Professor Ungku Aziz dropped by for one particular purpose, and we were having our rehearsal. And he decided to listen to the presentation, and we thought that we were giving him an honor by talking about the Sarong Index. But when we mentioned the Sarong Index in the video, he told us that he wanted the Sarong Index removed from the video. We had to promise him that we will do so, much to the horror of the person who was in charge of producing the video. And as anybody producing a video, they know it's very difficult to actually make changes at the last minute, hours of rendering. The Professor Ungku Aziz's work has been well documented, and there is a lot of interest on his work in various aspects. I just want to focus on Prof. Ungku's work in the cooperative sector, building up the cooperative movement. He felt that could be the third sector of the economy, and he went on to helm Angkasa for almost 40 years. And the cooperative movement in Malaysia owes much of its development and its growth to the work and the initiative and Ungku's passion in the cooperative movement. And of course, the second aspect, which I think was mentioned by Chamuri, related to the establishment of Tabung Haji, where Ungku, in his research, found out that the rural Malays were only saving to go on Hajj. And he decided that it would be a good idea to channel much of the savings to a tabung, which in the end would be accessed by the pilgrim. Okay, I do not want to dwell on what's happened with Tabung Haji these days, which is horrendous. And in and of course, Ungku Aziz's role as an educator and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Malaya for 20 years is exemplary. And Ungku, I think besides helping and setting the intellectual direction of University of Malaya at that time, one of the most significant contributions of Ungku was setting up of Pusat Asasi Science. And Ungku felt that the Malay students, in particular those from the rural areas, did not have a chance to go into the sciences like medicine, dentistry, etc. And Ungku felt that setting up a center to actually prepare them, a preparatory center for the rural Malays, would help them enter. And that I don't have the statistics offhand, but I've seen the numerous graduates in medicine and dentistry and others significant scientific disciplines who have benefited from Pusat Asasi Science, and this accolade must go to Professor Ungku Aziz. And of course, Ungku Aziz's there's several seminal works of Ungku Aziz. Okay, in addition to the Sarawak Index, Professor Ungku Aziz's work on poverty also includes his look at poverty using a interdisciplinary and a multidisciplinary lens, as well as looking at poverty in terms of rural poverty and the causes and the root causes of rural poverty, as well as looking at the health dimensions of rural poverty. And one of his works is to do with worm infestations among rural Malay children, which led to the lack of mental stamina and their subsequent performance in academia. So it was felt that the health, and of course, Ungku was a proponent that education was a major way out of poverty. And he felt that University of Malaya should only produce graduates, should not produce graduates for the sake of producing graduates, but produce graduates who can contribute towards solving the nation's social, economic, and cultural problems. And many, in the early days, many of University of Malaya graduates were in significant positions, both in the civil service, the private sector, as well as in government-linked companies. The other work of Ungku Aziz, which was focused on exploitation and neglect, and as I mentioned earlier, on the system, which was one of the major causes of poverty and an obstacle to development at the individual and communal level. And Professor Ungku Aziz also felt that he also attributed much of the status of rural poverty to the colonial regime, and as well as the fact that the rural Malays were actually neglected. And and I want to just bring forward the continued relevance of Ungku's work. We are still today, almost 6-7 months after his demise, talking about poverty. And as far as I can see in the near future, at least in the next couple of years to come, with poverty, with COVID and the pandemic, the poverty situation, not only in the rural areas, but also the urban areas, is likely to worsen. Many people are without jobs, and a new class of new poor have been created. And many of these new poor are not those who are originally the bottom 40% of the population, but those who are in the middle income, the middle 40%. And a lot of the people, the middle 40%, I don't have the exact statistics, have fallen into poverty, because when you have loss of income, low rates of savings, and no jobs, no incomes, then what do? The indebtedness increases, And in one of some of the work that I've done in urban poverty, the amount of expenditure of the urban population was more than double that of their incomes. That indicated that they were actually in a lot of debt. And while in the rural areas, there are things that you can use for your daily consumption, in the urban areas, you have to buy everything. And people in the PPRT flats, the informal sector workers, and various other such groups are actually in dire stress at this point in time. And with the pandemic in Malaysia showing no sign of abating, I think the work on poverty and will have to continue for many years to come. So Professor Ungku Aziz's work continues to be relevant, even if it is a poverty, not just rural poverty, but overall poverty. Malaysia had already gained several accolades in terms of its poverty reduction efforts, but what has happened now is with the pandemic, it is showing the cracks in the system and also showing the fragility of our support system, the lack of social safety nets, the lack of access to basic infrastructure, basic needs, food, etc. And this is something that really new poverty research needs to take into account. That is not just, poverty is not just about lack of incomes, as Prof. Norma has pointed out, the PLI. I myself have been a very strong critique of the PLI, and I've always maintained that the PLI is a useful starting point. But beyond that, but no matter how much you revise it, how much you increase it, it is just still a starting point. It cannot provide a comprehensive view of poverty in Malaysia or anywhere in the world, because poverty is much more than just the lack of incomes. When it comes to equitable distribution and definitely a lot of Prof. Ungku Aziz's inputs and his research are still relevant for today's poverty and equitable distribution. If an income distribution is an area which was much neglected in the early days when many of us were embarking on research in poverty and income distribution, and now Malaysia's income distribution statistics, both inter and intra income distribution, shows that we are not doing very well. The Gini coefficient is beginning, has become worse. And I think with the pandemic, the Gini coefficient is likely to even worsen much more. And as a result of this pandemic, there are several things that needs to be taken into account. But it is not all doom and gloom, because part of it has shown, the pandemic has also shown the resilience of communities and the way communities are coming up with solutions to deal with the pandemic. So it's very important that the government understands community-based solutions to dealing with the pandemic, and also propose strategies and programs that will leverage on the community-based efforts to deal with the pandemic. And I think I'm always, and one last thing I want to mention, as one of Ungku Aziz's seminal work, which has not been mentioned very often, is the work on the subdivision of estates from 1951 to 1960. He talks about the fragmentation of land and also the small size of farming land is available to farmers, which in no way can get them out of poverty. And also this had important implications for the Indian community when the estates were subdivided. Many of the Indians community that was living in the estates were actually pushed out of the estates into the urban areas. And then we have another set of dimensions and problems with the Indian community, which again is going to be discussed at another forum specific to the Indian community. But Ungku's work was also highlighted the shortcomings of the NUPW and how the members were disgruntled that their grievances were not addressed. And on that note, I just want to round up by saying that while Professor Ungku Aziz is no more, I think his work will live on for a very, very long time to come. And with that, I want to thank you. And I end my presentation here.
Thank you, Dr. Sulo. I think that was a very intimate analysis also, yeah, about Ungku's thinking and his work. Yeah, I think what Dr. Sulo has highlighted is that in the with the development or looking at development, especially when you look at poverty, you cannot delink, you cannot talk about the elevation of poverty without looking at the disparities, the inequalities, yeah, the income distribution side or the distribution side. And I must say that for those of us who belong to my generation, we'll say that in the 80s, yeah, in the 1980s, Malaysians were proud that we were more egalitarian. Our middle income earners were large, and we were compared to Australia, who was, you know, a country with the same kind of the disparities are not huge. But post 1990, I think, when development was at its peak, yeah, or post 1990, our development, the peak of our development is 1987 to 1997. That's when the disparities and the inequalities became worse, not just inter-ethnic. I mean, inter-ethnic have improved slightly, but intra-ethnic and spatial, yeah, which Madeline, that's what Madeline will be speaking about. So Madeline, I think I try to connect between what Dr. Sulo was talking about and what you will be sharing with us. Please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Noma. All my sifus are here, and my peers are also here. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to note here that we have about 209 participants in our program today. This is really, to me, this is record, because a lot of times you see that when you talk about poverty, nobody is interested anymore. But today it shows that there is still some interest in the study on poverty. Thank you very much, Prof. Noma. Thank you very much, Sulo, and also Prof. Terence and Prof. Chamuri, all this. Let me just share my slide. Okay, can you see that now? Boleh tengok?
Yes, we can. But maybe if you can go to slideshow, yeah?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yes. That one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Poverty Eradication in Sarawak and Sabah. That was the title given to me. Reviewing Ungku Aziz's contribution, okay? But I must start by saying that I only met Ungku Aziz once. And that was at a very interesting event. It was something about Japan, where he was supposed to attend an event organized by the Japanese embassy. So I happened to be there. They were talking about the haiku and everything. So imagine Madeline in a Japanese environment. Later, then I realized that he was one of the first students to study in Japan during the pre-war period. Yeah. Okay. So that was my only what do you call it, formal meeting with Prof. Ungku. But before that meeting, I was a student of development, economics. So Prof. Chamuri is my guru, my sifu. And in fact, most of the work that Prof. Chamuri cited and the work that Sulo mentioned, because all of them had intimate relationship by virtue of their work with Prof. Ungku, I only read them on papers. Because as a student of development in the old days, you cannot graduate without even reading any books, unlike now. People only read PowerPoints. Itu pun nasib baik read PowerPoints. Now they even don't read PowerPoints, but they can graduate with very good results. So that is the beginning of my bebel awal pagi petang ni. Okay. So Madeline Burma, I am with Unimas right now, Prof. Okay. Now I want to begin by saying this. This is, I would like to quote Usman Awang. Tiada tertandingkan segala bijaksana. Tajam keris raja, tajam lagi pena pujangga. And to me, Ungku Aziz is that pujangga, although people always call him as sang intellectual and everything. But basically what we see today, what Prof. Sulo was sharing with us, Prof. Chamuri was sharing, it is the writings of Professor Ungku. Okay, when we talk about the works of eminent people, eminent professors, intellectuals, these are the words that always come to our mind. You know, people refer to the work that they have written. Okay, I'm not against journals or anything, but the work, if you look at the first article that I read about his work on poverty, that was really, if we were to look at the kind of work that we are doing now with all the modeling and everything, that looks so simplistic. You know, to the point that if you ask a student of development now, many of them don't even know who is Ungku Aziz. And I feel like teary-eyed. That's why I'm so glad that the center at University of Malaya, Ungku Aziz Center, organized this to commemorate, to remember and honor this great intellectual that we have. So many of our junior, my students, I don't think they know Ungku Aziz that much, but they know that he was the Vice Chancellor of UM. Okay, that is Ungku Aziz. Wow. That is a beautiful family photo. Ungku Aziz is just not Ungku Aziz. He has his family there. Okay, so that is, and of course, I met all his other cousins, because there are so many of them in UKM, okay? Syed Najib Al-Atas, Syed Hussein. So I get to know about Ungku Aziz from the network that we had in UKM. We have this brown not really brown bag, where the, you know, professors like the late Ishak Shari, you know, Pak Halim, they used to hang out, they talk big things that none of us can understand. Now then I say, wow, no wonder they're so intellectual, because nobody seems to understand what they're talking about. But they were very serious academics. You know, they talk about issues, you know, and these are the kind of things, but never mind. What I want to share is that Ungku Aziz is the Vice Chancellor of UM. Just now, Sulo, you did mention that it is about intellectual leadership. I do not know to what extent do we have this kind of intellectual leadership at our universities right now. Sulo bukan main lagi geleng kepala. Sorry, Sulo. So I'm really, you know, this is really, you know, what they call it menjolok sarang tebuan. We look at the kind of discussion that we have now, you know, how, you know, universities are, I'm not too sure about private, but I'm talking about IPTAs, how, you know, it's about political appointment. And I remember people were saying at UKM, at our Senate meeting, they were saying, can we appoint our vice chancellors based on Senate punya nomination, like what they used to do in UM? You know, UM was, I think, the last one where Prof. Ungku was appointed as the vice chancellor based on Senate decision, not by some ministers or things like that. But now I'm sure they have their own different way of doing it. Okay, so in terms of intellectual leadership, so he's not just an administrator. He is someone that people looked up at. I remember meeting my friends from the University of Malaya. They talk about Ungku Aziz. Of course, they bumped into him while he was doing his early morning jogging. And I said, what? Your vice chancellor went jogging? And during my time, we have Awang Hat Saleh, another very, very prominent scholar. You know, when Professor Awang Hat Saleh delivered a speech, all of us nganga. The beauty of the Malay language, we will like say, oh my goodness. And that's why you see UKM have all this fantastic name, Puri Pujangga. And then we have, you know, Puri Pujangga to refer to, you know, all this Puri mean, you know, kind of a building, but it's actually just a building. But he said, no, you must give good name. Alor Ilmu, to refer to our parade. But now we don't dare call it Alor Ilmu because there's so many sampah inside there. So now we call it parade dekat UKM. Dulu it's named as Alor Ilmu. Okay, these are the kind of people that we looked up at. You know, when people mention their name, macam you all ni tadi, Prof. Shamuri in UKM tu, dia tu orang kata dia ada status dewa dia tu. Prof. Noma, siapa yang tak tahu Prof. Noma, Prof. Sulo. So jadi, you know, here I am. Prof. Terence, jangan sebut lah. You know, his work on politics and of development and, you know, all this menakutkan, he's right. Okay, balik kepada the role of Ungku Aziz. His intellectual contribution, both in terms of his knowledge, in terms of his writing, and policy impact. In the old days, when people talk about you doing research, we were not talking about KPIs. We were not talking about all the Q1, Q2, God knows how many Qs then. But we do provide policy impact. Prof. Norma, I know you were working very hard during our crisis of 1997, right? So I'm sure you know what it was like, how it is like now. So you have gone through that. There was no Q1. There was no Q2. I don't even remember things called scoppers. Now, oh my God, you name it. So everybody will be somewhere. Okay, never mind. So that is policy impact. But yet, we look at the kind of work that Ungku Aziz, the left. He left legacy behind. Tabung Haji is there. We talk about cooperatives now. So yes, I think Sulo and Prof. Chamuri have highlighted, his focus has always been the work that I know has always been on poverty and cooperative movement. And of course, as Sulo has mentioned just now, poverty, what are the causes? He's very famous 2MM, the monopsony. He's very much again on Orang Tengah. So that's why we have all these new agencies. And then he talked about the Sarong Index. But that story about the last part that you mentioned just now, where to the horror of the video maker and everything, he decided not to have the Sarong Index. And I will always remember the Sarong Index because Prof. Ishak Shari, because I learned also poverty from Ishak, he told me, you cannot be a student of poverty in Malaysia without knowing the Sarong Index. So now I'm going to ask my student, what is the Sarong Index? But I'm glad now that I've retired. So yes, multidimensional. And of course, Tabung Haji and cooperative. Now, that is the Royal Professor Ungku Aziz that I know I do not know him like Sulo, Prof. Norma, Prof. Terence, and Prof. Chamuri. But this is what we call the, kalau dia hadis tu, dia tak boleh sahih sangat lah. Sebab not the first layer. I am the second layer pembawa hadis ni. But I read his work, I followed his work closely. Now, back to poverty in Sarawak. I still have a few minutes. I think, okay, what is it about poverty now? Yes, when I was preparing this, yes, poverty had decreased. If you look at the data, statistics don't lie, statisticians do. Yes, poverty had decreased, but what poverty? Are we talking about, like you mentioned just now, Sulo, we are one of those, including Prof. Chamuri, so we are one of those who really is against PLI. We have been talking about no PLI, enough of PLI. So I remember when Alston came to Malaysia, he met up with us and in fact with Suhaka, because I have to brief him on human rights and poverty. So I even brought him in Sarawak to visit the poverty area when we were visiting. So he mentioned that, but when he mentioned that, of course, the government responded immediately. Although initially they disagreed with it, but later Tok Pa, our minister, they changed the poverty line. But still, the poverty. Yes, we do have pockets of poverty which make it very difficult for us, especially in Sabah, Sarawak, where in the old days, people say in the 70s, almost half of the population are poor. So it's much easier and less costly for us to bring poverty support to the rural areas. Now to find the Penan, can you imagine looking for 1 or 2 Penan families in the hardcore poor? So that is really costly. But there is also what we call the invisible poor. I'm not talking about the new poor. I'm talking about the invisible poor. You see, Sulo, the good thing about after retired, you can come up with all the terms and nobody is there to dispute you. But I want to coin this. I call them invisible poor. They are poor because their consumption exceeds income, and they have a lifestyle of the rich and famous, but actually they are not there. So this is what we call invisible poverty-stricken population, people who spend lavishly on their lifestyle. If you notice, they are on Facebook, they show off there. But now with COVID, we come to the new one, what we call the new poor. In the old days, we have the new rich, the nouveau rich. Now we have the new poor, which I think Prof. Sulo, you alluded to that. In fact, we did a lot, well, not to say a study because I don't have that much, I don't have any more research grant, but this is one area, new poor now, because many of them, when I was doing my work with Sohakam, the new poor who used to be T20 or M40, suddenly they fall into B20. So now people say that we don't even have a B40, maybe we even have a B70. That is a bit extreme, B70 they said. So that is really something. And the other thing that I would like to highlight here, the new poor, poverty is no longer just an income issue. There is this what we call economic and health nexus, especially with the COVID. So the health dimension comes into it, and it clearly shows to us if we do not handle economics, if we only handle poverty purely from an income perspective and forgetting about other aspects that which Ungku Aziz, he himself, as what Sulo had mentioned, he talked about nutrition. Now we're talking about nutrition, how we see our YBs, how we see our NGOs distributing food aid, food basket. Suddenly you see inside the condensed milk, all the non-nutritious. I'm not blaming them. It's okay because it is, well, it's easy to manage. But in addition to that, please add on nutritious food, fresh food, unprocessed meat. So these are the kind of things that we in the poverty should advise those friends in the NGO. The other thing that I would like to highlight also is the impasse of poverty studies. Nobody wants to study poverty until COVID, of course. I am only saying this at one time in my class. I see my student, they have to accept the course because they have no choice. Khusus wajib. Other than that, they're not interested. Why are they not interested? They couldn't find a job. Why they couldn't find a job? Nobody wants to take anybody from development studies. Alah, itu semua orang yang tak pandai aja yang masuk development studies. Orang yang pandai-pandai masuk econometric, yang pandai-pandai masuk finance, yang pandai-pandai masuk God knows what, okay? But not development studies. Only yang tak pandai only go to development studies. Suddenly now we see why people like us in development studies, we have a very, very important role to play. Okay, sempat membebel, okay? All right, poverty in Malaysia. I just want to show data. I love data. Okay? I just want to show Sabah and Sarawak very fast. Selangor is the highest contributor in terms of our GDP. Kuala Lumpur, and look at Sarawak. We are number 3, where is, because I'm focusing on Sabah. So Sarawak is number 3, and here we see Sabah. Okay? Now look at poverty. This is not my data. This is the latest Blossom data. Those who study poverty will have access to all this data. This is not poverty yet. This is only the penengah means median income and average income. Orange is median. So purata is blue in color. So look at that. Sarawak is the 3rd largest contributor to GDP. And look at our income. 4,000. And look at wilayah persekutuan. We are talking about inequality, but this is 2019 data. This is not 2020. This is the latest data, because 2020 data will come out soon. So this is based on Blossom. So look at Sabah, look at Sarawak. So because since I'm focusing on these 2 states, the best indicator would be, of course, penengah lah, median. Because if you purata, Sam, Rich, Sarawakian inside there will really skew it. And compare that to our friends in Selangor, compare that to our fellows in Wilayah Persekutuan and Putrajaya. So that is only income level. Okay? Look at the median and income here. See? The B40 median, M40 median, and T20. Sabah, Sarawak compared to Kuala Lumpur. Okay? I'm not delving inside it, just to show, because I don't have the time, okay? And look at this. This is kemiskinan. Kemiskinan. So Sabah and Sarawak, the highest is Sabah. Okay, Sarawak is still relatively higher. Second is of course Kelantan. Sorry, Prof. Noma, you're from Kelantan, right? Okay, I'm sorry not to say. I'm taking your time. Sorry. Let me just go on. Now, this is another interesting data. Daerah yang tertinggi di Malaysia. Look at the 10 daerah. Only one from Sarawak. That is Bintulu. Okay, Bintulu. The only top daerah. Now, if we look at daerah yang terendah, Sabah and Sarawak, we are fighting over getting who it will be at the top daerah yang paling miskin di Malaysia. Sabah top, Pusat in Sarawak when you take purata, but if you take, let's take the median. So this is Sabah, this is Sabah, Sarawak, Sarawak. None from, not that we want to share poverty with our colleagues in Peninsular Malaysia, but what it shows that even after how many years of independence of negara bangsa, we are still struggling with this, in terms of poverty. So I am sure when Ungku Aziz look at this, this is something that it will really bother him, spatial inequality. Okay, this is just to show 2016 and 2019, same data. still to show to you that Sabah and Sarawak dominates. Okay, in terms of B40, we are not much difference lah. If you look at it, Sarawak, where is Sarawak? I can't see. Okay, here 6.4%. But if you look at in terms of T20, Malaysia, the highest here. But the data is not very clear. Let me just go continue. This is to show to you places the nearest to schools, pusat kesihatan, and I'm just taking another basic amenity, kemudahan air. We still have 0. Okay, let me start from here. We still have people in Sarawak, about 15.5% whose location are located more than 9 kilometers away in Sarawak. In Peninsula, in Sabah, about 8.4%. And those in terms of private health centers, so you see 15.5% too. Can you imagine during COVID? So this is to sekolah. Those living more than 2.4 kilometers, masih lagi di Sarawak, about 2.4%. More than, and if you look in Sabah, so this is Sabah, and this is kemudahan air. This is kemudahan air. So basic amenities in terms of access to schools, access to health centers, Sabah and Sarawak is still far behind to our friends in Semenanjung. Okay. Now nutrition. I'm just showing figures. This is nutrition. Although this is the last data that I got from Kazana study. They did a study. So this is about stunting. That is also another indication of poverty. In the old days, we only look at income, but now if you look at those age less than 18 years, so Sarawak is 11.4%, Sabah 16.4%. One of the highest is in Terengganu and Pahang. So these are figures that I took from Hazana. Stunting less than 5 years, Sarawak, Sabah, we are still there. So stunting is an indication of low nutrition. So this is in terms of underweight. Okay, Prof. Muhammad did a lot of studies under UNICEF. So if you look at underweight, it is also an indication of poverty. Okay, let me just continue. So what are the causes of poverty? These are all the things that you know. Remoteness, lack of opportunities, culture, family background, lack of participation. And it relates to all this, the causes. So I'll just go through this. I don't want to go into the details because I don't have much time. Our lack of opportunities, a culture and family breakdown, ibu tunggal, ibu tinggal. So we don't only have ibu tunggal, we also have ibu tinggal because of our berjalai, the culture of berjalai, where men, Dayak men, will go to Singapore, go overseas to earn their living. Okay. And then loss of cultural heritage is really something big for me because I see that due to deforestation, due to the buildings of huge dams in Sarawak. Okay. Participation. We have very weak grassroots leadership and lack of political representation of minorities. Because in Sarawak, we have more than 40 sub-ethnic groups. Sub-ethnic groups. So the Ibans like me, yes, we do have representation. But what about the Penans? We have Penan, we have Punan, we have Ukit, we have Beketan. We have so many. Okay. Then the other one is the issue of patron-client relationship. I think Prof. What do you call it? Terence, this is his expertise. Now, vicious cycle of poverty, education. Not only we do a problem of dropout, there is also the issue of opt-out. During fruit season, they leave school. And then when they feel like coming back, they come back. So in terms of, it's very hard to monitor them, okay? And in terms of governance, federal-state relationship, very thorny, especially now, politics of development, I will highlight that. What it means is that bureaucratic red tape, statelessness, administrators know best syndrome, and then our officials, like hierarchical attitude. Now, these are some of the programs. And to me, when it comes to Sabah and Sarawak, we have this, what we call the Panadol approach, the watering can approach. One size fits all. It works in Semenanjung, so it should work in Sabah and Sarawak. Look at how we address the COVID-19. Lockdown in Semenanjung, so we think that it will work when we do that in Sarawak. And without realizing that to get a police permit requires you to travel about 5 to 6 hours on a boat just to go and get a police permit to cross the border, to go to the clinic, to go and get your all the necessities. Okay. So degradation of natural resources is how you know. Okay, the last part I want to talk is that much of Malaysia's success at poverty eradication was on the back of our economic performance. So if we do not do well in our economy, our poverty eradication is going to suffer. Number two, there must be political will. Number three, the policies, design versus implementation. Number four, database. Are we using dynamic data? What we have, like many of us know, our poverty data is very static. You know, the IKASE data, it is really, really static. It's not using, but now I think they're improving. And then of course, macro and micro policies. So the quality of economic growth, sustainable development, human rights. So I just want to move on, food for thought, my last 3 slides. One, we need to move away from providing assistance to generating collaboration. Moving away from how we can help the poor to how we can help each other. I think the COVID really teach us this. Top down to bottom up. Another one is, these are the things that I want to look into in terms of development projects. What is it that we want? We meet the targets, but we miss the people. So trickling down versus bottom up. And then one size fits all. Another one, Malaya-based model or Putrajaya-centric rather than Kuching or Sarawak-centric or Sabah-centric. And then Melayu, Bumi Putra is equivalent to Pribumi. Policies for the Malays are assumed to work for the Pribumis of even the indigenous people of Peninsula. Actually, it is not. So we should now focus on Malaysian, not just based on what they are rights-based. Income-centric, now we need to focus on human-centric. So the development trust now, we need to move away from charity to rights-based. Charity means giving to people. Needs approach means development for the people. But right-based, since I'm working in Suakam, as Prof. Noma, it's about development by the people, okay? So basic amenities, as I said, we needed quantity, quality, accessibility, connectivity, human capital development. Don't forget the lost learning generation. Sarawak and Sabah and those who live in the rural areas are the ones who are most affected. However, the result of our SPM certainly shows that it is not really the case. But I still plead to the government. This is really an issue that we should look for, to look into, okay? Drop out traditional knowledge. The last one, okay, sustainable livelihood. Not just focus on income, but we need to focus on human, financial, environmental, physical, social, and political. And the last part that I want to look at is this. I want us to look at this carefully. If we talk about equality, this is my last slide, Prof. When you talk about equality, equality is, for example, this guy, all of them want to see the recent European Cup. So the man, a girl, and this is a girl, and this is one on the wheelchair. So equality means putting them all on the same pedestal, giving them the same amount of bantuan, whether they need it or they don't need it or whatever it is. Now, that is equality. What we are talking about here is equity. That is, for this guy, he may not need it. But what you need is to give this girl these 2 extra boxes. And for this on wheelchair, what she needs, not the boxes, but a ramp. But most important, I think, for the future, Prof, in honor of Professor Diraja Ungku Aziz, this is something that we should look into. That is that we should remove all systematic barriers that prevent our nation from moving forward to become what we used to be in the 80s or the 90s that you mentioned just now. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dato' Madeline. I couldn't agree more, and I think the participants would say that as well. All 3 panelists have given a very, very analytical, critical analysis of linking, the work of Pak Ungku and the developments in the country. So, as Madeline says, development or the work should be, and the work of Ungku is about giving equal opportunities. That where you are born, to who you're born to, and whichever location that you are born in should not determine where you are, you will end up. with. Yeah, so that's what it means by equal opportunities. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we can go to the questions. I don't see much of questions, but I think there are a lot of comments.
Could I ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
Just I'm just very intrigued by Prof's point that Prof. Ungku Aziz did not want the Sarong Index to be discussed in the presentation. But Sulu, you didn't tell us why. Because we were all inspired by the Sarong Index. What was it that he felt was wrong with the Sarong Index that he asked that it be taken out of the presentation?
Okay, we really don't know. We really don't know what happened. But when he walked in on our presentation unscheduled, he said, "I don't like the Sarong Index, just remove it." And poor Abdullah almost had a heart attack because he worked so hard on putting together the presentation, the video, the photos, the voiceover and everything. And Ungku walks in on the eve, I think it was in the afternoon together, if I remember correctly, Norma, walks in and says, just remove he came in for a different purpose, but when he saw the rehearsal, he decided to stay on. And we thought that everything there was very complimentary to him. But maybe, I do not know, maybe he found it was irrelevant. Really, I have no idea, but he just said, remove it.
Yeah. And yet, when we wrote to Professor Amartya Sen, when we asked him to be the first chairholder, he was saying he was too busy. Yeah, he was too busy, but he knows Ungku's work and his work on Sarong Index. So that was very interesting. So yeah. Anyway, and so
one part is your challenge in trying to get Professor Jeffrey Sachs as the chairholder. Maybe you want to say something about that for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, that was interesting because Pak Lah, the Prime Minister, Datuk Tun Abdul Ahmad Badawi wanted to launch it, and the name for the chairholder was not, we couldn't offer, we did not get any confirmed as affirmative confirmation from any of our the professors that we have approached. So I had to go to the US. It was winter. Went to Washington. Columbia is in New York, sorry. Went to New York and and went out, took the 7 a.m. because he had a class at 8. So I had to see him at 8 in order to get his confirmation. Otherwise, Pak Lah cannot make the announcement because it is not proper, yeah, to make an announcement when the person has not confirmed the acceptance. Yeah, so that was very interesting. But Professor Jeffrey Sachs surely did a lot of homework about the faculty, about the university, and about Pak Ungku. Because before I left, I was in the on the way to the airport when I had his reply and who said yes, I'll accept and agree to be the first chairholder. So that was yeah, it was quite unnerving because the time was too close to him launching the chair and the center. Yeah. So enough of the history. Now let's look at what are the interests of our participants. And there's one comment which is very long from Ms. Adriana Abu, talking about how the basic needs and also that we are earning and our income is in ringgit, but everything else is imported. That's one of our problems. Yeah, for our food products are very we have to pay a big bill on the imported food products. And talking about the different issues that we are facing. Yeah, so it's up there as well if any of the panelists want to address that. Yeah, but I have a question here. You can have you can scroll your screen in the chat box, yeah, to the panelists. But there is a question here, although it's anonymous, yeah, that the question is, should we handle the new poor using some mechanisms as the ordinary poor? Yeah, and the second question is how social protection programs should support the new poor. As we know, poverty eradication program focus on income generating, while social protection programs focus on maintaining income, which is about income smoothing. Yeah, I think that's what the question means. Yeah, so maybe those two questions and that long comments by Ms. Adriana. I would open it to the panelists if any one of you would like to take up any of the questions and the comments.
Can I start now?
Yeah. Sulo, you want to take
the approach or what approach we use to deal with the poverty among the new poor? I think when 1 out of 2 persons in Malaysia were poor, then a blanket strategy actually worked. But over time, there are pockets of poverty. There are people who require targeted and differentiated approaches to poverty reduction. And if you look at what is the major factor that contributed to poverty reduction, it was not the policies and programs. It's basically economic growth that actually was a major contributor to the reduction in poverty. And very often in various sectors, the programs and policies that have been used are not exactly the correct policies and programs. So what we need to do is to have tailor-made policies and programs depending on the different poverty groups, as the causes, manifestations of poverty vary depending on their environment, depending on their socioeconomic status, depending on their what do you call it, the generational nature of the households, the composition of the households, etc. So we need more targeted strategies, and we also need strategies that are specifically tailor-made. So I think we have to move away from blanket strategies to have tailor-made strategies because of the reasons I've stated.
Okay, any other response from, yeah, sure.
Prof. Nama, I've been toying with this idea because I do agree with Prof. Sulo, because I think the pandemic has, on one hand, initially I think it works, the blanket, because we were not very sure because we don't have information and data. But now when we look at the if you look at the categorization, yeah, T20, M40 and B40, even B40, they reclassify into 4 categories. M40 also another 4 categories, T20 into 2 categories. Now, the new poor that I was referring to, the ones that I met, I do not know about studies that have been done, but the people that I've met who came to meet me and my NGOs and things like that, the new poor, the ones that I never thought I can imagine that they became B40, most of them were from the M40, the lower, because I said just now there are 4 categories. So the M40, they felt, and the difference, the thing about the M40 is that many of them were from the middle class. They have education, middle class, they have the network, they have all the what we call because initially they were okay. It is only when during the pandemic that they lost their job or they lost their income. So the approach to deal with the new poor, you cannot give them handouts, to me, because handouts don't solve their problem. To me, it's about giving them opportunities. If we have small contracts, government, small contracts, income generating activities, giving them handouts doesn't help them, because these are people, many of them were, some of them were already working at a certain level. Many of them were, if they work in the government, they will be got at the level, that level, because many of them have at least Form 6 and above, meaning to say they have a degree. So giving them handouts, like giving to the B40, is really, to me, is really not helping them in the long term. It is best that, like Sulo mentioned, we work with them, depend on which sector they are from. Then it works, rather than just giving blanket statement, oh kita bagi RM500, everybody gets, because all the B40 need that amount of money. So for me, the B40s and the M40s, or even the T20s, they are the pilots, remember? You see, they have all the network, they have all the knowledge, they have everything. What they need is just a small push. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, Prof. Chamuri, you want to comment?
I share the same view on this new poor, because once we move away from income measurement, we need to look at the various dimensions they are affected poorly. So from these dimensions, agencies can pick up which are the more crucial ones. Is it health? Is it education? Is it capital? We have a lot of capital injection program, assistance program like the Amanah Ikhtiar. I think Amanah Ikhtiar is a well-known program for its success, but then it needs supervision and acceptance by the group and also the project. So we need to look at the aspects of poverty, and from there on deal with it individually, either by agencies or NGOs and so on. Yeah.
Prof. Chamuri. Yeah, Prof. Sulo, do you want to speak?
Sorry, Norma, you asking?
Yeah, do you want to speak?
No, I don't.
Okay, sure. Then we'll go to the next, before I come to there's a new question, but the previous questions, yeah. Someone was talking since Datuk Madeline mentioned about the students today and also the KPIs with the professors. The question is from Mr. Chiok Fake Fern, yeah, that he was saying that while the members of the academy are more concerned with meeting their KPIs instead of policy-informed research studies, I would love to know, okay, this is about me. Prof. Norma conducted the research. There was policy-informed during the 1997 crisis, and Professor Madeline on how should policy-driven research should be addressed, should be able to address all these different groups, yeah, the unemployed, malnutrition, in the time of health crisis, yeah. So yes, I was involved. Thank you very much, Mr. Chiok, yeah. I was, for 1997 crisis, I was not in the, I was not supporting the government. It was Professor Mahani that was with the NEAC, then the Advisory Council, yeah. But I did some work for the World Bank, and the analysis was about the responses by the government. It was not just on Malaysia, but I was working on Malaysia, the government's response to the 1997 crisis. Now, what happened in the 1997 crisis was that we were not prepared for any kind of crisis. And someone would say to me, well, now too, we're not prepared, we're never prepared. However, we managed to get out of that. What were some of the lessons? One of the lessons that I think it was rectified in 2018 was to improve on our social protection. That in 2018, we introduced the employment insurance system, where we have the unemployment benefits that we collect both from the employers and employees into a fund that is managed by SOCSO. And when they are retrenched or when they're faced with crisis, it's the same fund that can pay them out in order for them to support them while they are looking for jobs. Yeah. So this was one of those that we have learned from the 1997 crisis that we are doing here. I was hoping, because I'm working on social protection with my center, I was hoping that we learn, we don't waste this crisis, as the saying goes, don't waste a good crisis. We learn from this crisis that we have to be prepared for any kind of crisis. To say that now, oh, we have enough, we don't have enough, it's a bit late. We just have to support, yeah, people's lives and livelihood is a great challenge, yeah, for people to live now. But I was really hoping that we also learn from this crisis. As they say, make hay while the sun shines. So if we get out of this pandemic, yeah, and our economy is back on our feet, that's when we should have a stronger social protection. And this can't be overemphasized. I think many researchers, local, international, multinational agencies, are talking about what Malaysia needs is a stronger safety net. True, Dato' Madeline, that we shouldn't give handouts, although handouts are necessary for those who can't work, for those who are disabled, for those who are, for the orphans, for elderly, yeah, or for senior citizens. You have no choice, but that you have to give handouts. But social protection is not just about handouts. It's not about charity. It is a development strategy that you have the social insurance aspect of it, where everyone should contribute. The moment you're earning, you should contribute into a fund where that fund can be invested, like the way Quad has been investing, EPF has been investing, yeah, and so has been investing. And it is the return on profits of those investments that we should support when people are in need. So this is a very good lesson for us that you cannot rely on government alone. Everyone has to contribute. Yeah. So this kind of putting everyone on a national social safety net will be the way to go for Malaysia. And in social protection, there is another aspect of it, which is the labor market intervention. That's when the upskilling, reskilling, yeah, matching, active matching between retrenchment and employment should be there. And SOCSO is doing a good job in this. So Madeline, I agree with you that we have learned a painful lesson, yeah, through this pandemic, our databases, yeah. I always give an example, you know, of someone, because at our center, we do the Malaysia Aging Retirement Survey. We conduct that nationwide survey, and we go to Sabah and Sarawak, Madeline, my people, my researchers. We don't just hire enumerators. They go to all these places, onto boats and climb hills, etc. And we know that someone in Baluran, even if you give them some bantuan, you know, for them to get to the nearest bank will be 100 kilometers away. Yeah. So we have to find a way, a good social system, a good social safety net will be to reach the furthest, the poorest, the most illiterate. You ask them to apply online. How can they go online? Yeah. But at least with the BSH data that we have, and the way using the negative list, yeah, that the government implemented with starting with BRAME and the BSH and now Bantuan Prihati, is the way that where databases are now working together. So at least not working together, but at least we have some data that was formerly not in IKASIF. Yeah, we have in the LHD, and so that we can exclude those who are earning maybe 10,000 and above. And but still, how do we reach them? You know, so we have to find a way that people, and now my card, through my card, you can access, you can provide, you can what you call pay in the support, you know. So we have some of the potential mechanisms, tools that we can use in order to improve, you know, the spatial inequality that you're talking about. So I think these are some of the things that I think we are working at the center. Sorry, I get really excited when I talk about social protection. Yeah, so at least some of us who have gone through, you know, the 1980s recession, the 1997 recession, and this current, you know, problems that we have, we can talk about how we should learn from all these crises that we went through. Yeah, so I let me stop there, and I go to the next question. Oh, it's almost 4, right? Time are we? Oh, we have a few more minutes. The next question is that because of the pandemic, a lot of people lose their income sources. How will it affect the gap between M40, B40, and the T20? Does anyone want to pick that up?
What's the gap?
Okay. I can try, Norma.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Sulo.
Okay, when you're talking about the gap, see what's happening is that okay, when you classify population into deciles or quintiles or whatever, it's based on an income. So we're talking about Gini coefficients and income distribution, and that's how you have your the different groups. So what will happen is that when more people from the M40 move into the B40, maybe the income distributions would narrow rather than widen. This is what I think may happen, because the opportunities of earning very high incomes are actually very limited during the pandemic. But of course, there are new sources of income and the new sectors that have actually developed as a result of the pandemic. And one of this is the online food business, which is not there as actively and aggressively as it is now. See, now everybody is selling some food online. So people are actually becoming very innovative, very creative. So what they're doing could help them cushion the impact of the pandemic on themselves. But in terms of distributions, I suspect that the intra-group distributions between the T category, the M and the B may narrow, but I think we cannot say conclusively without actually looking at actual incomes.
True.
This is just a guess that it might happen.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts from the others? No? While waiting for you to think about this, maybe we look at some other questions. Yeah. So talking about Pak Ungku, I think people still want to talk about his legacies. Yeah. There's a question here from Ms. Farah Shamin. We have gathered today to speak about Pak Ungku's great contributions, but I would like to know, what about his students and his mentees? How have they contributed? What are their contributions? Maybe we could also talk about that. Do you want to? Well, Prof. Chamuri, these are all his students. all of us, including me. Yeah, I'm a student of economics too. Prof. Chamuri.
I work on poverty as a poverty student under the development and agriculture economics discipline. A lot of Ungku's contribution I've looked at, especially those related to agriculture, rural development, and poverty. So I myself owe a lot of intellectual utang lah ya. Utang intellectual daripada Ungku's intellectual jadi banyak perkara-perkara yang saya pelajari daripada legasi Ungku itu masih lagi relevan pada hari ini. Misalnya tentang penyusunan semula masyarakat, kemiskinan itu satu tidak mengenal etnik, dan juga program-program pembangunan luar bandar yang banyak perlu dilaksanakan, gerakan koperasi dan sebagainya. Itu adalah saya ingat legasi penting Ungku yang masih lagi relevan dan juga menjadi strategi penting di dalam pembasmian kemiskinan dan peningkatan. Juga yang tidak kurang pentingnya ialah pendidikan ya, pendidikan yang di-highlightkan oleh Ungku tentang kemunduran pendidikan yang berkait dengan pemakanan, starvation, disguised starvation and also poverty. Jadi saya ingat itu masih lagi relevan, terutama kalau kita hendak melihat peningkatan di dalam IQ ataupun kecerdikan pelajar-pelajar luar bandar, aspek pemakanan itu perlu digembling sebagai satu strategi penting di dalam pembasmian kemiskinan.
Others, you have any comments?
No.
No, can I just continue from where Prof. Chamuri mentioned? I think the legacies you can see almost everywhere. Yeah. Although I know that corporate Malaysia has taken over, but a lot of the agencies that's around, cooperatives is very much alive nowadays, especially in schools. Yeah. Dr. Azmah here is with me. Yeah, she would always remind me that Pak Ungku's introduction, yeah, or rather cooperatives' introduction into Malaysia is not just at the level of the rural population or tabung haji or cooperatives at workplace and organizations, but it's also among schools. It's getting very popular, yeah, and the idea of cooperatives is also quite democratic in a way, yeah, because the cooperative movement in Malaysia is one vote, one member, yeah, whereas in some other countries, in the US, for instance, if you have a big share, then you will have bigger votes, yeah, but in Malaysia, one member, one vote. So that is the kind of democratic. Pak Ungku is someone who really believes in democracy, and he himself practices it. He doesn't offer to be a leader or to be a president of any organization. He was elected, yeah. So, and when he feels that that's not suitable anymore, or the philosophy of the organization has changed, he just step out, yeah. So these are, cooperatives is one of his legacies, and some of the economic policies that we have. And I want to talk about nutrition. When he started, when he was a vice chancellor of the University of Malaya, we had food. We had cafeteria. Yeah. So food is part of the feast. So you have no choice but to eat while you are in the university. And to him, that's important, because he felt that if you leave it to the students to decide, so probably although they have scholarships, they will probably save and just eat Maggie, or something like that. And he believes that it is very important, and this is confirmed by evidence out there that say that now is talking about this malnutrition, stunting. And also it would affect, stunting is not just about your height. Stunting is also about your cognitive abilities, yeah? And the most important time for a child's cognitive development is from birth or from maternity, yeah, until 1,000 days. So it's about 3 months to 4, about 3 years to 4 years old. That's when the child is very important in the child's life. So if you don't support, yeah, so this is what social protection is. If you don't support children through nutrition, and we are talking about Malaysia aspiring to be a high income nation. So if you don't have smart kids, smart people, how are we going to become a developed nation? So so Prof. Chamuri is right that Professor Ungku Aziz, or Arwah, yeah, Allah yarham, Professor Ungku Aziz, inshallah doa for him, yeah, that that he is well ahead of his time. I mean, now the UN agencies are talking about nutrition, preschool, about 1,000 days, 3 years old, 4 years old kids, that this is the most important days of their lives, where if they don't get the right nutrition, it will affect the rest of their lives. So yeah, so again, Pak Ungku was very progressive in that sense. And yeah, so do you, is there any other comments? Because if there is none, then maybe I'll close our session. Yeah, that one legacy. Sure.
Sorry. Yeah, a couple of, just a few words, Norma. Okay, one of the things that I learned from Ungku was very early on when I used to be in the translation project with Ungku. And he used to dutifully come to the faculty almost every week. And we got that project completed. There was a translation of the World Bank report by Kevin Young et al. I can't remember who the other authors were. And we managed to get a Bahasa Malaysia version of it. And I was in the translation team. And that was when we knew Ungku a little bit, because he used to come to the faculty all the time. A second thing is that I probably was the only non-Malay translator in that group. And that's thanks to Ghani Osman and my translation certificate, which is fresh at that stage. The second thing is that I remember Ungku asking me to visit him after I came back from the UK once. And when I went in, he was actually mixing a drink. And I asked him, Prof, what is it that you're drinking? Because it was like kind of, and he said, this is vitamin C. This is something that I take and you should be taking on a daily basis to protect you. And now everybody's taking vitamin C. So that's one of his legacies, that you should be taking vitamin C to prevent ward off any kind of illness. And the other thing that I remembered, Norma, was that when you said that when Ungku felt that he was not the right person or he was no longer happy with that organization, he left. One of the things he told me was that when he left after 20 over years, he said, never look back. Once you have left, let the others carry on with it and don't go and interfere with what's going on, and never ever look back. So that's something that also I think has influenced me a great deal. Other than, of course, my intellectual development and my interest in poverty, and that has been, part of my academic life for God knows how long, centuries, I think. So, I mean, Ungku has impacted all of us in one way or the other. And especially as a student of rural development. And I still remember what Madeline was saying, that it was like, it is only students who are not very smart who go on to disciplines like rural development, public administration, and so on and so forth. The smart ones will do accounting, business, or they will do analytical and applied economics and statistics. So, but I think I think as a team in the faculty, I think reduce that, I mean, change that perception quite a bit, Norma, by doing various things in the faculty, which I do not want to get into at this stage. But I think we were instrumental in doing that, where we said that staff belong to departments, students don't belong to departments. They only had specialization tracks. And that helped, I think, quite a lot. I think a lot of there were a lot of doomsday people who said that, the people who are going to be depressed, students are going to be depressed. We didn't see anyone being depressed. So that's what I just want to say, that Ungku has impacted all of us in many ways. And I think there are a lot of roads and buildings that are named after Ungku Aziz, even before he passed on. I think there was the road was after he passed on, but I think the Bilik Ungku Aziz have been in the faculty for years.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll give the opportunity for the other panelists as well to say a few words before we end, or your final round of ideas and thoughts. Yeah. Madeline, you want to go first?
Okay, thank you. I thought that it would be my guru, Prof. Chamuri. So thank you very much.
Your guru will close. Your guru will close.
Thank you very much, Prof. Noma, Sulo. I mean, meeting all of you again, it's really wonderful. When I see the discussion on the chat box, it appears that there is a lot of interest. What you have created here, I think many of them are not my generation, because I don't see familiar faces except for Sulo, Prof. Chamuri. So I think we need to continue doing what we are doing right now, because although Sulo, I felt a bit pessimistic just now about development. I was using the word the impasse of development economics, or actually it's the more of the impasse of development economics, because a lot of people were questioning whether we are relevant now, you know. But then now when we look at the pandemic and everything, I think there is a need for us to relook at, you know, the study of poverty. And I think even a few days ago, I attended a conference, another conference. I was at Rais Saniman, Dr. Rais. He was discussing the NEP. And I was like, what? People are still talking about NEP because we thought that, you know, we're done with it, you know. And now suddenly there is and now today we are here discussing Prof. Ungku Aziz. So I think it is time for us to reflect, to look back. There are some relevance, maybe the good ones we take in, and the not good ones, take it as a lesson from this COVID. So I really agree with you, Prof. Noma. So keep up the good work, and Prof. Sulo, thank you very much. And Prof. Chamuri, thank you very much. And Prof. Terence, although I don't see him, thank you so much for inviting me to share my thoughts on this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof. Terence, you want to say? You want to speak?
I just wanted to say a word of thanks to the speakers and to you, Prof. Noma, for moderating the session so well. The speakers, your contribution.
I haven't closed the session, Terence.
Because Madeline referred to me. I just wanted to say thank you, and then you asked me to speak, so I thought I better close. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
No, but you can speak, but
I
hope the participants have not left.
Just say some closing remarks. I think poverty will still be there as an issue discussed in all the development plans. Although we say it started in the first Malaysia plan until the 12th Malaysia plan, its dimension has changed, and its measurement also has changed. But I think the essence on the concept and also on poverty will remain. Although the dimensions of poverty in Malaysia will change from especially from being rural to urban now. I think urban poverty is coming up as a big issue, and then we will see also the increase the issue of inequality. I think coming up as one of the issue, and I think we attribute our knowledge and on poverty. We have to trace back on the earlier work of Ungku Aziz, and we are grateful to him for imparting this knowledge on students of poverty and development. Some note from me. Thank you.
Yeah, Sulo, do you want to say a few words?
Okay, the way the discussion is going is that I'm wondering when I will be able to retire. It looks as if there's plenty of work to be done, but I hope that the crop of people working on poverty will be many, many more, so that some things can be done. And I'm very happy to say that I've moved quite a okay. Research is very important. Doing academic writing is equally important in a university, but I think equally important and very inspiring is the kind of what we call action research, where we're actually doing things with communities. And this is where my work with Yayasan Sejahtera is really, really very inspiring, because we are actually touching lives. We are actually going down to the community. We are assessing, we are talking about community needs. And of course, the IKASE was mentioned many times. That is basically quite nightmarish, dealing with IKASE. So you go to the ground, there's the IKASE data, that is the Pengulu's data, and there's somebody else's data on poverty. So what we do is we put all of the data together, we overlay one over the other, and we come up with a matrix. And if your name appears on 3 or 4 lists, then you qualify for our programs. Otherwise, you don't. Because all of these data sets can also be manipulated, as Madeline, you have said, statistics don't lie, but statisticians do. So do policymakers. Okay. And with that, I want to conclude.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Sulochana Nair. So if I can add also, yeah, just so that, because there are a lot of, I think many students as well are here, that Pak Ungku also worked on gender, yeah? He's also, as Madeline put it, when he was talking about opportunities, that any kind of barriers, and gender is one of those barriers, yeah? So he's worked on gender, beg your pardon?
I said the Hawa project.
The Hawa project is the UN project, yeah, that he was working on looking at. Then it was about migration, rural female, yeah,
female factory,
rural young female coming into the manufacturing sector, yeah. So he was looking into all this, and mind you, when he was the vice chancellor, the deputy vice chancellor of academic affairs, for the first time that we had a woman, yeah, Dato' Asma,
that's right.
Maju Omar. So he believes in equality, not just about between races, within races, but about men and women, yeah, that women tend to be in the disadvantaged position, and many have mentioned, but many other legacies of Pak Ungku, but I think Pak Ungku will always be remembered also as a gentleman. Yeah, he's a gentleman, and also he is a brilliant negotiator. That when Madeline talked about the impact on policies, so it's not just about your ideas that can be innovative and progressive or impactful, but it's how you present your ideas. Again, I would like to link to one of the points made through the chat box about the KPIs, yeah, between having policy impact versus ISI and Scopus, etc. I think the right balance is the way to go, yeah. Some of our research can be rehashed into a publication. Some are not because they are also confidential, some of the data, but that can also be done, yeah. But going one way, especially when you know, people are also talking now about how scientific research, if it's not peer reviewed, then it's not acceptable. But what's happening on the ground perhaps is quite different, yeah. So again, this is about academic leadership. Ungku is one of those that if he believes in something, as I said, he's a very good negotiator, brilliant negotiator. One of the examples is how was one of the last university to adopt the semester system because he did not believe in it. He felt that the semester system is like a quick, you do one course within 14 weeks, and that's it. You forget about the course for the whole year or for the whole 3 years, yeah? So he believed in going deeper into understanding things. So that the term system, yeah, we used to have the term system at the University of Malaya, train us to think deeper, train us to take our time to reflect on some of the things that we're working on. So unless you have, or you are a negotiator as well, having that academic leadership or to provide that academic leadership would not necessarily be effective. And I want to I want to close this with one more point about Pak Ungku's legacy. His legacy is also his daughter, yeah. The former central banker. She's one of the best central banker in the world, yeah. Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Aziz, yeah. So she also, when she was in the central bank, she introduced a financial inclusion. There were many programs that were introduced, or products that was introduced by the central bank. Of course, it worked through the other banks, yeah. The financial inclusion aspect of banking in Malaysia. And it takes a woman, of course, she's a woman and she's Pak Ungku's daughter, but also what's happening globally as well, yeah. It's when you have a woman as the IMF managing director, that's when the social protection or social aspect of economic development was looked at. Yeah, so that is his legacy, I would say, also, yeah, among the so many other things. So I will conclude our session. It has been a very insightful, very reflective, and both critical and analytical, but nevertheless impactful. And to thank all our panelists, to congratulate all our panelists. You have represented Pak Ungku's ideas and his practice, his passion, and also the Dean for giving me the opportunity, or Dean who's also the acting director, giving me the opportunity to talk to my friends. We are like having an informal chatting session here. And this is a good way of meeting, actually, so that we maintain our social distance. We are really maintaining our physical distance here, but we have achieved the objectives nevertheless. So I will hand over maybe Prof. Terence, who want to say a few words before the Secretariat takes over. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Prof. Norma. I will say a few closing words just to bring everything to a close. There has been much request I've seen here for us to do a few more of these forums. I would like you to know, for the participants who are still here, we are organizing a series of public lectures. These public lectures will be held as soon as we can. We are inviting prominent academics as well as former government leaders who helped implement the research ideas as public policies through government. So these public lectures will be organized soon, and we will keep you informed about this. There's also a conference that's coming up at the end of the year where we will pull together a bigger group of academics to come together to review the works of Prof. Ungku Aziz. So thank you for participating in this forum, and please do attend the forums that we will be having over the course of the year. Let me close by thanking Prof. Norman Monsel for moderating the session so well. And I'm deeply grateful to our three speakers. As I said, they came without hesitating and we invited them to speak. And I can say on behalf of those who are here, we benefited much from your wisdom, from your reflections about Prof. Ungku Aziz's contribution to academia. On that note, let me close this forum. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay safe, yes.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Below,
Thank you to all
especially.
of our
Bye. Enjoy. It's a
Okay.
good time.
Take care, Norma.
Take care, everyone.
Okay,
Better-
Solo,
you,
enjoy
Abdul.
yourself. Thank you, Terence. Thank you, Prof.
I'm
Chamuri.
working
My
very
neighbor,
hard.
but I still have not.
Thank you,
Norma.
Norma.
We could see that.
Thank you, Sulo. Thank you for coming all the way from Uzbekistan to join us. Thank you.
For flying all
See
the
you
way.
guys.
And thank
It's a
you,
much
Prof.
safer place in Malaysia these days.
Also, yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.